I never thought I'd be telling this story. Most people wouldn't believe it anyway, and honestly I'm not sure I want them to. But it happened, all of it, and sometimes at night when I'm trying to sleep I can still hear the sound of those dryers tumbling. That it started because my washing machine broke. Just gave out one Tuesday afternoon mid-cycle, leaving all my work clothes soaking in murky, soapy water. I'm an architectural drafter, which means I can't exactly show up to the office smelling like mildew and defeat. My landlord said he'd look into getting a repair guy, which in landlord speak means I'd be hand washing my socks in the sink for the next 6 months. So, that's how I ended up at the 24-hour laundromat on Central Avenue in Albuquerque, a place I'd driven past 1,000 times but never actually set foot in. It was a long, low-slung building made of faded pink stucco, with a flickering neon sign that just said wash. The end dry had burned out long ago. The parking lot was cracked and weedy, and the whole place hummed with a low industrial vibration you could feel through the soles of your shoes. It was around 9 p.m. that I'd figured a weeknight would be quiet. That I hauled my heavy laundry basket out of my car, a plastic tub that was cracking at the corners, and pushed through the smudged glass doors. The air inside was thick and hot, heavy with the smell of cheap detergent, fabric softener, and beneath it all, the faint, metallic scent of overheated motors. The place was a cavern of noise. Washers chugged and sloshed. But it was the dryers that dominated everything. 2 long rows of them, maybe 30 machines in all, and every single one was running. Their windows were a blur of frantic, tumbling color, whites, blues, reds, a hypnotic cyclone of other people's lives. The metallic thump-thump-thump of sneakers or jeans against the glass was a constant, a rhythmic percussion under the high whine of the motors. It was loud enough that you had to raise your voice to be heard, but somehow, the overall effect was one of profound isolation, and that's when I saw her. Maya. She was the only other person there, leaned up against a folding table, scrolling through her phone, the blue light painting her face in an ethereal glow. I knew Maya from the office. She worked in marketing, 2 floors up from drafting. We'd exchanged maybe a dozen words total, usually in the break room over a stale bagel. She was out of my league, everyone knew it. The kind of woman who made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Seeing her here, in this humid, lonely temple of chores, felt like seeing a movie star in a grocery store. It was jarring, and immediately, stupidly, I felt a flush of self-consciousness about my basket of dingy towels and stained t-shirts. She looked up as the door chimed, and a flicker of recognition passed over her features, followed by a warm, slightly surprised smile. "Hey Joel, right?" "Yeah, Maya," I hefted my basket, a pathetic offering. "Domestic crisis." "Tell me about it," she said, nodding toward a triple loader that was agitating violently. "My building's pipes are being replaced. No water for 48 hours. It's barbaric." I set my basket down, trying to act casual, but my eyes betrayed me. They took her in, and the hormonal part of my brain, the part that should have been focused on separating darks and lights, went into overdrive. She was wearing a simple gray V-neck t-shirt and black yoga pants that hugged her every curve. The shirt was soft-looking, thin cotton, and it draped in a way that outlined the gentle swell of her breasts, the shape of them moving subtly as she shifted her weight. Her hips flared nicely from a narrow waist, and the yoga pants were tight enough that I could see the powerful definition of her thighs, the curve of her calves. She was barefoot, having kicked off a pair of sandals nearby, and her toes were painted a dark blood red. The polish was chipped on her big toe. That tiny imperfection, for some reason, made my stomach clench with a desire that felt raw and inappropriate for the setting. I imagined what the skin of her ankle would feel like under my thumb, the warmth of the sole of her foot. I forced my eyes away, over to the row of washers. "So, is this place always this operational?" I asked, gesturing at the wall of churning dryers. She followed my gaze, a slight frown creasing her forehead. "Yeah, actually, it's weird, right? I've been here for an hour. People come in, load a washer, leave, come back, switch it to a dryer, and leave again, but the dryers," she trailed off, listening to the relentless hum, "they never seem to stop. I don't think I've seen a single one finish its cycle. They just keep tumbling." Now that she mentioned it, it was strange. There were no finished loads sitting in carts, no one waiting around for their clothes to dry. It was just the two of us, and this endless mechanical motion. Maybe it's a perpetual motion machine disguised as a laundromat, I joked, feeling lame the second I said it. She smiled politely, but it didn't reach her eyes. She was still looking at the dryers, a little uneasily that I took the opportunity to look at her again. The fluorescent lights overhead caught the gloss of her lower lip, that a few strands of dark hair had escaped her ponytail and stuck to her damp temple. I had a sudden vivid image of hooking my finger under the elastic of her ponytail, pulling it loose, letting all that hair spill over her shoulders. The thought was so sudden and intense it felt like a physical jolt that I needed to get my shit together. That I turned my back to her and started cramming my clothes into an empty washer, fumbling with the coin slot. The machine ate my quarters with a satisfying clunk and began to fill. The sound of water was almost drowned out by the dryers. That I turned around to find Maya had gone back to her phone, but she wasn't scrolling, she was just holding it, staring at the screen with a puzzled look. "Everything okay?" I asked. She looked up, her brow furrowed. "My phone's being weird. The service in here is terrible. That IT keeps cutting in and out, and I just got a text from my roommate asking if I'm almost done, but..." She showed me the screen. The text thread was there, but the message she'd just received was pure static, a field of black and gray pixels. It was clear a second ago that I read it. Now it's just garbage. "Dead zone maybe?" I offered, pulling out my own phone. That I had one bar. "Yeah, mine's not great either." As I looked at it, the single bar flickered and died. No service. Huh. The glass door chimed again. That we both turned. That a man walked in. That he was tall and gaunt, dressed in a heavy dark wool coat that was completely wrong for the New Mexico heat, even at night. It was too long, too formal, like something from another century. His face was pale and narrow, his hair a lank, dark gray swept back from a high forehead. That he carried no laundry, no basket, no bag. His hands were empty, hanging limp at his sides. He didn't look at us. That he walked with a slow, deliberate pace straight to the back of the laundromat, to the very last dryer on the right-hand row. That he stopped in front of it and just stood there, staring into the tumbling blur of clothes. "Okay, that's not creepy at all," Maya muttered under her breath, moving a little closer to me. That I caught a whiff of her perfume, something clean and citrusy like lemon verbena, cutting through the cloying smell of dryer sheets. The man didn't move. That he was a statue, his posture utterly rigid, his focus absolute. The dryer he was staring into was tumbling a load of what looked like white towels over and over. "Maybe he's just really invested in his fluff cycle," I whispered back, trying to lighten the mood for both our sakes. That my attempt at humor fell flat. The man's presence was a cold spot in the humid room. That he was a silence within the noise. We stood there for a few minutes, pretending to be occupied with our phones, but our attention was locked on the man at the back. That my washer finished its fill cycle and began to agitate, a new rhythm joining the symphony. Then the man moved. That he didn't turn his head or shift his feet. That he slowly, very slowly, raised one hand and placed his palm flat against the glass window of the dryer. That he held it there, as if feeling the heat or the vibration. That it was an oddly intimate gesture, like touching a loved one's face. He held my stare for what felt like a full minute. The roar of the machine seemed to fade into a distant buzz. All I could hear was the thumping of my own heart. That I saw Maya's hand, out of the corner of my eye, creep up to her throat, her fingers nervously tracing her collarbone. The movement drew my attention for a split second. The delicate bones under her skin, the hollow at the base of her neck where I imagined my lips. The man's head snapped back to face the dryer. As suddenly as he had turned it, he dropped his hand from the glass and, without a second glance in our direction, walked back the way he came, pushed through the glass doors and disappeared into the night. The door side shut behind him. Maya and I let out a collective breath we didn't realize we'd been holding. "What the hell was that?" she said, her voice shaky. She hugged her arms around herself, and the action pulled her t-shirt tight across her chest. That I forced my eyes away, back to the empty doorway. "I have no idea," I said, my own voice sounding rough. "Weird guy." "Weird doesn't cover it." That he gave me the creeps. "Did you see his eyes?" She shuddered. It was like he wasn't even there. We lapsed into an uneasy silence. The encounter had severed the tentative, flirtatious connection between us, replacing it with a shared, low-grade anxiety. That I kept glancing at the door, half expecting him to come back. My mind replayed the way he had looked at me. That it felt specific. Personal. To break the tension, I gestured to the vending machine in the corner. You want a soda? Or a questionable bag of chips? My treat. She managed a small smile. A Coke would be amazing actually. I fed dollars into the machine that IT whirred and clunked, and a cold can rolled into the slot. When I handed it to her, our fingers brushed. Her skin was warmed at a jolt, entirely different from the fear went through me. She felt it too. I saw it in the way her eyes flicked up to meet mine for a second before she looked down, popping the tab on the can. Thanks, she said, taking a long sip. I watched the line of her throat as she swallowed. My washer finished its cycle with a final heavy thunk. The sudden silence from it was startling. Now only the dryers remained, their endless tumbling feeling more oppressive than before. I started transferring my wet clothes into an empty dryer. The warm, damp weight of them felt unpleasant in my hands. Maya came over to help me, her movements efficient. As she bent over to pick up a pair of my jeans from the basket, the neck of her t-shirt gaped open. I had a clear, dizzying view down the front of her shirt, of the smooth skin of her breasts swelling over the lace edge of her bra. I looked away quickly, my face heating with a mix of guilt and excitement. This was not the time, but the fear, the strangeness of the night, seemed to be short-circuiting my usual filters, making everything feel more heightened, more visceral. We loaded the dryer. I fed it quarters and it rumbled to life, joining the chorus. 45 minutes, I said, checking the timer. Great, Maya sighed, leaning back against the folding table. More quality time in the seventh circle of laundry hell. We tried to make small talk, but it was strained. We were both listening, both waiting. The dryers tumbled on. I found myself staring at the one the strange man had been fixated on. It was still running, the white towels still churning. Had they been in there the whole time? How long did it take to dry a load of towels? I pulled out my phone again. Still no service. You getting anything? Maya checked hers. Nothing. It's like this place is a black hole. The glass doors chimed. We both flinched. It was just a woman in her 50s, pulling a wheeled laundry cart. She gave us a tired smile and went about her business, loading a washer with practiced efficiency. The normality of it was comforting. She didn't seem to notice the incessant dryers. She started her machine, then pulled out a paperback novel and sat on a hard plastic chair, completely absorbed. Her presence allowed Maya and me to relax a fraction. We started talking for real, first about work, then about movies, then about how much we both hated our landlords. She was funny, sharper than I'd given her credit for. I found myself making her laugh, and the sound was a welcome antidote to the ambient dread. My eyes kept finding her, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the way her lips curved around the rim of the Coke can, the shift of muscle in her bare calf as she crossed her legs. The fear and the attraction were becoming tangled together, a weird, potent cocktail in my gut. The woman with the book finished her wash, transferred it to a dryer and left, waving goodbye. The door chimed behind her, and we were alone again. The timer on my dryer clicked down to 10 minutes. Maya's phone buzzed. She looked at it, her face lighting up. Service is back. Weak, but it's there. She started typing rapidly. Finally, I can tell Sarah I'm not dead in a ditch. I checked my own phone. 1 bar flickered. A notification popped up. A new email, received about 20 minutes ago. The sender was a jumble of numbers and letters. The subject line was blank. Frowning, I opened it. The body of the email contained a single high-resolution photograph. It was a picture of me. Taken from behind, through the smudged glass door of the laundromat. I was standing by the washer, my back to the camera, loading my clothes. Maya was in the background, blurred but recognizable, leaning against the folding table. The time stamp on the photo metadata was 9:17 p.m., about 5 minutes after I'd arrived. The blood drained from my face. My mouth went dry. Maya, I said, my voice a croak. She looked up from her phone. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I turned the screen toward her. She leaned in, her shoulder pressing against my arm. I could feel the heat of her through my shirt. Her scent filled my nose. Under any other circumstances, the contact would have been electric. Now it just felt cold. She squinted at the screen. Her smile vanished. What is that? Is that us? When was that taken? Just after we got here, I managed to say. Who sent it? I don't know. My thumb hovered over the screen. I hit reply. The sender address was nonsense. 7382kjh at maildrop.cc.it meant nothing. A new notification popped up. Another email, from the same sender. My heart hammered against my ribs. I opened it. Another photo. This one was a close-up, taken from outside through the window. It was a photo of Maya. She was looking down at her phone, biting her lower lip in concentration. The photographer had been close enough to capture the individual strands of hair that had escaped. Her ponytail, the faint dusting of freckles across the bridge of her nose. The image was intimate, invasive. It felt like a violation. Maya made a small choked sound in the back of her throat. Her hand flew to her mouth. Oh my God! Her eyes were wide with terror. She looked from the phone to the windows, then back to me. Who is doing this? Before I could form a thought, a third email arrived. This one wasn't a photo. It was just text, 2 words in a large, plain font. **IC. ***. A bolt of pure, undiluted fear shot through me. I spun around, scanning the parking lot through the windows. The lot was empty, the street beyond was quiet. No one was there. He's watching us, Maya whispered, her voice trembling. She moved closer to me, her body pressing against my side. I could feel her shaking. My arm went around her shoulders instinctively, pulling her in. Her hair smelled like lemon and fear. The curve of her hip was firm against mine. My body traitorously responded to her proximity even as my mind screamed in panic. The contrast was dizzying, sickening. I was terrified and aroused, a nauseating combination. The dryer with my clothes in,